Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time for Bitcoin Brief, where we break down the top stories from the crypto sphere. And today we are delighted to be joined by one of the most prolific writers in the scene. From Bitcoin Magazine, we welcome Colin Harper, associate editor at Bitcoin Magazine. Hi, Colin. How are you?
Doing well. How y'all doing?
We're doing great as well here. Thank you very much. So, one of the first story that you sent here is about Israel's crypto banking wars. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, so I thought this story was pretty timely. We had a lot of reports come out a week or so ago about Israeli Bitcoin investors having trouble paying their taxes because their banks were not letting them make deposits. So we got set up with a few people, some leaders in the industry over in Israel, Bits of Gold co-founder Yuval, and some representatives from the Israeli Bitcoin embassy, just to kind of talk to them about what was going on, how widespread this problem is, what are some of the root causes, and also what could be some of the solutions going forward.
So kind of if you can break this down by comparing this, I would say, to other countries in the world, how would one deal with this in a different location?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that really struck me about it was, the idea that exchanges like Bits of Gold were having trouble maintaining, business accounts with their banks. That's not really anything new. The fact that they went to court with it all the way up to the Supreme Court, won a lawsuit, and have defended its right to hold these accounts in those banks is not totally unheard of, though it's strange for those that don't know. It did not establish a precedent, which means that the protections that Bits of Gold was given through the case would not be extended to other exchanges or businesses. But the strangest thing, I think, the strangest thing about this whole thing for me is the fact that banks are even shuttering accounts for just regular users and not letting them deposit their crypto gains. I have never seen that in the United States. You might have some people, your bank might say, oh, we see that you're sending money to a cryptocurrency exchange, you can't do that. That's happened, but certainly they've never said you can't deposit this money into the bank account with us. Here in the United States, lawsuits probably be another route to solve something like this if it were to happen. But truly, I've never really heard of something like this happening, and I was honestly pretty shocked to see how widespread it was.
It's really odd. But then what do you think it would take to change this?
From what I've seen, a lot of, from all the people that I talk to, it seems like, there's the title, lawsuits are leading the charge for now. That seems to be the only real way to get regulators and legislators to hear what's going on here. The Israeli Bitcoin Assembly founder was telling me that this is their hope that they can lead this class action lawsuit on account of Bitcoin investors. But what they really want to see is they want to see regulators come out with strong regulation and protections for consumers so that there are clear guidelines around what is and what isn't money laundering. And look, this should be a non-issue, right? Because if you're talking about has this money come from, there's no better tool to track that than blockchain. And it would take very little actual analysis and tools like BitTax's tools to figure out, hey, where was this money coming from? Where's its provenance? And, was it involved in anything that's sketchy that a bank wouldn't want to get its hands on? Like I said, this should be something that's very easy. And the Israeli Bitcoin Assembly founder also told me that it's his hope that, the Bank of Israel will also come out and try to, get banks on the same page with this and get these customers the protections they need so that they can actually pay their taxes. Some people are racking up penalties because of this.
Yeah, very unfortunate that hype has to be the reason that people are actually paying attention to this. Because as you mentioned before, this is a bit odd that there is no way to kind of deal with this. Definitely something we have to keep ourselves updated on to see what goes forward. I'm sure that this is a struggle within other countries, even though it's not necessarily something we've heard of. Regulators need to be up on cryptocurrency and blockchain regulations so that this kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. But then moving on to Blockstream mining. So they kind of have a vision. The company has a vision for what mining can be. Break that down for us.
Yeah, so this was pretty cool. The Blockstream team has been silently scaling up 2 mining facilities, one in Quebec, Canada, the other in Georgia in the United States. And their vision here is right now, the mining service is really only open to wealthy individuals, high net worth individuals or institutions. And what they're doing for them is they're basically hosting their mining equipment for them and giving them the opportunity to decide the people who are being hosted for. Blockstream is giving them the opportunity to decide which pool they want to join. They're going to give them a dashboard to look at, all the kind of mining metadata and things like that. But so this is basically just a mining hosting service, and they've got, like I said, 2 facilities for this. And their vision for down the road is the mining pool that they have integrated is using the Better Hash protocol, which is basically just a protocol that makes controlling your mining operation and running your full node, especially for less technical users, a little easier. So down the road, the kind of vision for this is to have hosting facilities all over the world where not just, big players or high net worth individuals, but some of the smaller players can send, about 10 dozen or so ASICs into Blockstream's mining facility. And then they'll be able to use Better Hash to target it at any mining pool they want to vote on upgrades, which is another huge thing coming off of the anniversary of SegWit this past August. So it's really a kind of lofty vision to try to redistribute the hash rate away from some of the bigger players that we've seen spring up in China.
But then, and this may be an obvious one, but do we know what implications this may have in terms of the environment? We know that mining takes up a lot of energy. Has that been looked into?
Yeah, so where they're actually establishing these mining facilities in Quebec, Canada, Quebec has an abundance of hydroelectric energy, so they're getting very cheap renewable energy there. As for the place in Adel, Georgia, I was trying to look up what the most common energy sources are around there. In the southern United States is where I come from. Most of our energy is from natural gas and coal. Some of it's from nuclear, some of it's from hydro, but not very much of it. So I don't know what they're getting into there. If I had to guess, it's probably natural gas, and they've got some tax cuts from the government. But one of the things that I think that you're starting to see, 75% of mining is powered on the backs of renewables. I think Blockstream in this case will be looking for the most renewable energy they can. And I think one of the big, when they scale and add more facilities, and one of the big things that's a takeaway from this, I think, is, if they can do what they want to do and they scale these facilities up, this will be a way to really re-democratize how mining is done and get smaller players who may have too many barriers to entry into the game. Because right now, the way mining has scaled up, the way hardware has scaled and gotten more efficient, it's just required massive facilities to run these things, and it hasn't really been opened up to the retail market. So I think initiatives like this, and hopefully others like it down the road, will open that up for the smaller players in the industry.
Right, but then a perfect segue is, do you think that this would take off?
I think that, I think it really depends on a few things. I think it depends on how well Blockstream or other players, when they have services like this, can scale their offering. Because as I was talking to Samson Mo, the CSO of Blockstream, and he said, right now we're only doing high net worth investors because it's a lot easier to run 1,000 ASICs for one person than it is to run one ASIC for 1,000. So it's all about how they can scale that up. I think hardware costs also factor into it, like how expensive or inexpensive are ASICs going to be in the next 5-10 years. I think those are really the 2 big factors. And I think it also depends on how many cryptocurrency investors and enthusiasts are going to want to run their own mining hardware. Most are probably going to want to buy it. So, I don't think it'll make a huge difference with everyone's going to be running their own ASIC, but I think it's going to make it a lot easier for enthusiasts who really want to get into mining to really have a slice of that pie that they haven't been able to have yet.
Absolutely. Curious to see if it would take off, and then to what demographic. It's always interesting to see within the crypto space who you get, because you have the people, the institutional people, and then you have the early adopters that were in their basements from really, really early on, kind of working with this stuff. So how they would take this new mining equipment and this kind of, they're reframing what we know about mining in this way, which is super interesting. But
Absolutely.
Then another use case then for Bitcoin and for cryptocurrencies, Iran Rescue Bit launched a Bitcoin fundraiser to aid flood victims. Please elaborate.
Yeah, so this was a great story. I love a good fundraise, and I love a good circumventing sanctions and just circumventing the government's purview. Love a good story like this. But so for those that don't know, and I was actually unaware, I have to admit my ignorance until I talked to some sources on this one. There's a good video. Iran was struck by just devastating flooding in March and April of this year. 300,000 individuals were affected. Something like 200 cities, about 2/3 of the country was affected by this in some way. And because of the Trump administration's sanctions following the fallout of the Iran nuclear deal, international aid has had a really difficult time making it into the country. Financial support and lifelines are, basically cut off because the Iranian Red Crescent Society, it's like their Red Cross, doesn't have their international bank accounts because they've been shuttered because of the sanctions. So some of the Iranian Bitcoin community, very tight-knit, very, very fervent, as I say in the article, decided to launch a fundraiser using Bitcoin because, as we know, Bitcoin doesn't need a bank account. It can circumvent the sanctions because no one has control over the network. And they're just trying to get some much-needed financial lifelines and pipelines established into the country. And, God willing, this will get some much-needed relief and funds to those people because, I mean, this is the last thing that they needed. Iran is already undergoing a lot of political and economic turmoil. The sanctions are only making things worse for your average, everyday citizen in Iran. And my heart goes out to those people. And I just hope that this can really provide the solution that it needs to.
No, it is truly heartbreaking. But do we we have any information on how this money is eventually reaching the end person it's intended to help?
Right. So what Iran Rescue Bit is planning to do is there are some local cryptocurrency exchanges that operate in Iran, trading for the rial. I was not told which ones they're going to use, but I was told that their plan is to liquidate into rial and basically pass the buck to the Iranian Red Crescent Society. And then the Iranian Red Crescent Society from there will distribute it to the people in need, buy food, water, medical supplies, all of that good stuff.
Hopefully that becomes a bit more streamlined. There are, I know, other companies working on kind of similar products that at the end of the day, a simple text message, SMS, could eventually get that crypto to them in the easiest way possible. So hopefully that is streamlined and people who need the help end up getting it. Thank you very much, Colin Harper, Associate Editor at Bitcoin Magazine, for joining us and breaking that down for us today. Everybody watching at home, blocktv.com. Keep watching for more blockchain and cryptocurrency related news.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.